What differentiates you from the other candidates?
I'd say there's three key things. The first is that the policies that I'm prioritizing are not just words on a web page. I have a track record for over 10 years of working on policy. I have real policy victories to show in each of the areas that I'm prioritizing. On the environment, on affordable housing, on racial justice, on supporting our schools. I've been there doing the work. So you're going to know where I'm going to be in a year because it's where I've always been. The second is I'm the only person in this race that is willing to use all the tools in our toolbox to address housing affordability, to make sure that we have deeply affordable housing, that we have middle income housing, that we're building mixed use developments that mix income so we're not concentrating poverty. I have the right plan to address housing. The third is that I think the state experience that I bring to the table here is going to make a critical difference for the city. So much of what local government does requires an intimate understanding of state government and where local government ends and state government begins. If we want to build housing and get transportation services near the housing that we're building, we need to work with the state, right? If we want green buildings, we need to work with the state building code. So there are so many examples like this where my state experience is going to help move Newton forward.
I would say what separates me from the two other candidates in this race is that I am the only candidate in this race who supports local representation. As I said earlier, in 2017, I volunteered for the No on Charter campaign, and I did a lot of campaign work for them, and we still have local representation in Newton. Another difference is that I do not want to abolish single-family zoning. If we abolish single-family zoning, all it will do is lead to more expensive homes here in Newton, and it will increase the amount of teardowns that are happening in Newton. Another difference between me and my opponents is that when it comes to development, I actually have a track record of holding developers' feet to the fire. And ultimately, when we hold developers' feet to the fire, we get better developments and more community benefits for you, the residents of Newton.
I'm glad to talk about that. And also just to clarify, I also support local representation at the ward level. I don't know if I was asked about that, but that's my view on that. And as far as what differentiates me, I think a few things. The first is my personal experience that I bring to the table. Having grown up here, having parents that live here, and now raising kids here, my sort of campaign is about making Newton a place to live for people at different generations. And I have the personal perspective of 3 generations of my family currently living in Newton. So that's one thing I bring to the table. Another thing I bring to the table is my experience in the private sector, specifically in investment management. I think the city is right now going to run into some huge challenges on the financial side, and my experience seeing how institutions handle those challenges and plan for a wide range of scenarios, I think will be valuable for what the city needs to struggle with in the coming years. And finally, I think Newton has an incredible opportunity that we're not taking advantage of in terms of creating an entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem here, taking advantage of the thousands of startups coming out of Boston. And we could be doing so much more to make Newton a welcoming home for those companies. And that could do so much good for our local economy, for our small businesses, for our retail. And I work at a startup now. I have experience seeing what a city can do to support a startup ecosystem from my experience working in Tel Aviv, the startup capital of the world. And that's something that I would be excited to bring to the city council.
Please explain why you are the best candidate to promote equity and anti-racist representation in Newton.
Racial justice, 2020 has been an important year for racial justice. But, I'm a Black man living in America. I'm a Black man living in Newton. When I first ran for city council in 2019, I would knock on a door and I would say, "Hi, my name is Tariq Lucas, and I'm running for city council." And they would, there were a few doors where they would look at me and they would say, "Oh, you mean Boston City Council?" And I'm like, "No, not Boston City Council, Newton City Council." So I would like to, if I am elected to this office of the Ward 2 Councilor-at-Large, I would like to work with my colleagues on the council and help them see certain issues through my background, through my personal life story, through my lens. That is what I would like to do if I am elected to the council. I would also like to be a role model for the people of color who are living in Newton, who may want to run for political office in the future.
I definitely think there's a lot of things we can do to make Newton more racially diverse and racially open. And if you have to ask if I think I'm the best candidate on that one issue, I actually think I can't honestly say I would be. I think having Tariq elected on this one issue would be historic. We haven't had a Black city councilor since 1987. That's the year I was born. That would be a big deal for the Black community and for just having diverse representation. Obviously, this is an election with many issues, and I don't think there's one issue. I think there's many issues, which is why I'm running. But on this one issue, I can't say I'd be the best candidate.
I've been working on the issue of racial justice in Newton for many years. I'm in my second term on the Newton Human Rights Commission, working on issues around diversity and equity. In the wake of Donald Trump's election, I called for Newton to become a welcoming city for immigrants. And after months of deliberations, we were able to get the city council to pass that resolution. And now immigrants are protected to some extent in our community. In the wake of the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others, I called for Newton to declare racism a public health emergency. And after several months of deliberations through the Human Rights Commission, we were able to pass that resolution unanimously. Now I want to take that leadership to the city council through processes like police reform, where, I think it has to be said, systemic racism is real and it happens here too. I've heard the stories of a Black man who gets off the highway coming back from Boston and gets pulled over by a white police officer who recognizes him as a member of our community and realizes he should apologize because he has no legitimate reason for the stop. So these issues happen here just like they happen everywhere else. So we need evidence-based police reform policies that address these issues. We need more diversity in hiring for teachers, for police officers, for city staff. We need to have protocols for incidents of hate or bias, which I'm working with school committee member Tamika Olszewski on. And we need more affordable housing, because we know the average Black family has $8 of net wealth, and the average white family has $250,000.
Should we increase the amount of housing in Newton for people who earn less than 65 to 80% of Newton's median income? And can you please explain your response?
We absolutely need to. And I'm the only candidate in this race who's been advocating for this. That's why I've been endorsed by affordable housing organizations like Engine 6 and Voters for a Vibrant Newton, because I've been doing this work. I have supported housing projects that have brought in over 400 units of affordable housing that neither of my opponents have supported. And so, this is a key distinction here, that I support mixed income, mixed use developments because, they're good for our community. They're environmentally friendly. They're revenue positive. And they allow us to bring in a mix of incomes where we have affordable housing mixed in with people that can afford the market rate. And we're not concentrating poverty, which statistically is shown to produce better results. But I also believe we need housing for people who are under 65%. That's why I support creating an affordable housing trust fund and putting real dollars behind it through policies like increasing our CPA contribution and putting it exclusively towards affordable housing. Because by doing that, we can make sure that we have more housing for people who have no hope of affording Newton. Because look, I gotta say, if you're working a minimum wage job, even if you're working 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs, you might not even be able to afford a unit that's at 80% of the area median income. So we need to have housing for people from all backgrounds that's available here in Newton. I believe in that. I'm the candidate in this race that will use all the tools at our disposal to address affordable housing.
I think there definitely is a housing shortage at sort of all levels of income, including the 60 to 80% AMI. And I think we should do things to increase that housing stock. I think there's a number of ways to do that. One is through market rate development projects that subsidize a portion of affordable housing. Another is to find funding sources outside the city at the state and federal level. I think we'll have an opportunity with this new administration at the federal level to potentially get more resources that we should look for. And I think that in general, sort of increasing the supply of housing, not just at the 60 to 80% AMI, but even 100% AMI, it's hard for people to afford to live in Newton. And if we grow our housing stock in a thoughtful, strategic way, where we're growing where it makes sense, transit-oriented centers, and maintaining the character of the neighborhoods and the feel of the suburb at the same time, I think you need to balance both those things because people move to Newton for a reason. They move to Newton to have that green space and to have that suburban feel. I think there's a way to balance those tensions, and I do support taking into consideration both ends of the spectrum.
The issue of housing affordability is personal to me. It's part of my story. I was displaced when I was 12 years old. from our apartment in Brookline, and my mother was displaced from her apartment when she was a teenager in Boston. So this is a personal issue to me. But there is a crisis in terms of a lack of affordable housing in our region. But the current proposals to eliminate single-family zoning will not accomplish it. We need to create an affordable housing trust fund, like Mr. Barish said, but we should make private developers pay into that fund and not raise the CPA surcharge tax on Newton residents. We need to partner with nonprofits to put on municipal property, such as parking lots maybe. But unlike the Austin Street developments, which is in Newtonville, we should partner with nonprofit developers, and that way all of the housing will be affordable. Additionally, for very large developments, we should think about increasing the affordable housing up to 25% and not the current one at 15%. So these are just some of the things that we can do here in Newton.